bring you information about activities, events, and programs that are going on at the library. If you've watched the show before, you know that we try to bring you a lot of information about upcoming children's and adult programs. We try to review new books, new compact discs, new video cassettes, and new materials. Talk a little bit about new materials that are here at the library. And then each week we also interview a guest, usually someone who is going to be doing a program, either an adult program or a children's program here at the library. This evening, in the first portion, I'll be joined by Burke Eschler of our Youth Services Department. Burke and I are going to be talking a little bit about upcoming children's and adult programs that are going to be going on over the next few weeks at the library. For the second part, Deanne Redmond from our Reference Services Department is going to be talking about new books that have just come in that she thinks that you might be interested in. And for the third section, we have a real interesting section tonight. We have Fred Longen from Broken Diamond Books. Fred owns Broken Diamond Books, which is a used and rare book store in town, and Fred's going to be talking a little bit about rare books, old books, what makes them valuable, and this is really in preparation to a program that will be going on here September 28th that Fred and Barbara Schenkel, who owns Bar John's Books, are going to be doing, called What Makes a Book Valuable, and we'll be talking about that particular program a little bit later this evening. So let's start with Burke. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Jim.
We're going to talk a little bit about programs. We're going to start with children's programs first.
Well, first of all, we need to mention that as of this last Sunday, our hours changed from our summer hours to our winter hours, which means that we are now open 1 to 5 on Sundays again for the school year.
Right.
All the rest of the hours for the week remain the same.
Okay. So people who now want to use the library on Sundays can use it on Sundays.
We'll be here.
We'll be here for you. Good.
Second, we now have our story time schedules out, which can be picked up at the Youth Services desk here at Parmley. Okay. They go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are our story times. Okay. They're at 10:30 to 11 on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Also Thursday we have a 1 o'clock story time.
Okay.
On Friday we have a video program.
Okay.
And if you pick up one of the schedules, it has age brackets that they're aimed at. So if parents would like to come in and get these, this is a good guideline to find out which ones would be most appropriate for your particular child.
Because I know the stories are sometimes geared towards different age levels and that type of thing.
Yeah, Tuesdays are older kids, Wednesdays are younger kids.
Okay, good. I know we have about 3 or 4 adult programs coming up over the next few weeks. Why don't we talk a little bit about those? You want to talk about
Neat stuff going on.
Okay, great.
Judge Pedro Hernandez is back.
Okay.
He comes down here for us a couple times a year. Does a wonderful program. He's really fun to listen to. And it's called An Introduction to Small Claims Court. And he tells people how they can use small claims court to the best of their advantage. How to be prepared when you come into small claims court so that everything goes along smoothly. And he makes it really enjoyable to listen to. The guy's a real character. He's fun to watch.
He does it's an excellent program that Judge Hernandez does. We really enjoy having him here.
The next thing we have is called Bringing Nature Inside. Arlene Driesen is coming down, and she'll be teaching people how to make the transition with their outside plants to bring them indoors for the wintertime, and how to take care of those types of plants indoors for the wintertime so that when spring rolls around again, they can take them outside and they'll be all ready to go.
Okay. I know Arlene works for Ganann's Florists in town, so it's very nice of her to lend of her time to come and do this program for us at the end of the month. So,
the next one is called What Makes a Book Valuable. Fred Longen of the Broken Diamond Books will be down here, and he's going to show people what books that are out there that are worth a little bit of money. People may have things in their house that people may have things in their house that they have no idea that have any value. And Barb Schenkel will be down here with him from Bar John Books. And this sounds like it's going to be a really fun program.
I think it's going to be a good program. We have a lot of questions at the library from people who either would like us to tell them whether or not a book they have is valuable or find out how they do it. And we're really not in that business. And we do have some sources that will help. But one of the things about this program, too, is I know both Fred and Barb are encouraging people who attend to bring a book with them that they think might have some value, and they'll be able to take a look at it and tell them whether or not it is valuable and tell them how to tell that kind of thing. So I think
that'd be a
good program. So.
The Pedro Hernandez small claims court thing is going to be on September 12th at 7 on
Okay.
third floor of the library.
Okay.
Arlene Dresden, Bringing Nature Inside, will be on September 21st
Okay.
at 7 p.m. on third floor of the library. And What Makes a Book Valuable will be at 7 p.m. on September 28th on
Okay.
third floor of the library.
Good, good. I think we have a poetry program coming up in October.
In October, we have cowgirl poet and humorist Buzzy Vick,
Okay.
and she'll be here to do a poetry reading.
Good.
She is a current resident of Montana. She hasn't been here a whole long time. She's
Okay.
right now a outfitter and trail guide and takes people on pack trips, things
Good.
like that.
Good.
And I guess she is really fun to listen to also.
That's what I hear. This is another program that we've done in conjunction with the YMCA Writers Voice Project. And Buzzy Vick is one of the people who will be touring with him, and she'll be doing a reading here. So.
Sounds great.
Yeah, yeah.
And last but not least, the Friends of the Library book sale
Okay.
will be coming up in October 27th through 29th,
Okay.
I believe. They sell books that are donations to the library that we can't use in our collection, and they do this a couple times a year, and they use the sale to raise money
Right.
to buy special things for the library that aren't ordinarily taken out of the budget.
Right. They've been very generous to us over the years with the proceeds from their book sale.
They do a really good job, and there are things in the library that we just wouldn't have if it wasn't for them.
Right, right. Looks like we've got a lot of children's and adult programs coming up, and as people, if they continue watching the program, they'll see in October we've got a lot of things lined up already, as we do on into November too. So it's going to be a fairly active fall with programming here. Thanks for joining us, Burke.
Thank you.
Our guest this evening, or our first guest, has been Burke Eshler from Youth Services. Burke and I have been talking about adult and children's programs. Stay tuned for the second segment with Deanne Redmond from our reference department. Deanne's going to be reviewing some new books that have come in. And then the third part, we're going to have Fred Long and talk from Broken Diamond Books, talking a little bit about the program that he and Barbara Schenkel will be doing the end of the month on valuable books, or what makes a book valuable. And Fred's brought some books along with him that from his store that he's going to talk about. We're going to talk about books.
Fine.
So stay tuned for Deanne in a minute or so here.
Hi, and welcome back to the Library Show. My name is Deanne Redmond. I'm one of the reference librarians here, and I'd like to talk to you today about some of the new books we've just gotten into the library. And I thought I'd start off with some of the nonfiction, all of it with a little bit of local flavor. The first one I'm going to talk about is called A Good Place to Live, America's Last Migration. And this book is about the impulse to move from a community that doesn't feel just right into one that has what you're looking for. All these people escaping inner city crime, bad neighborhoods, things that just don't feel right, and trying to find that ideal community. And the reason this one has a little local flavor is that one of the chapters included in it is about the community of Missoula and how many people are moving there to escape what they found was wrong where they had been. The second one I'd like to talk about is our natural history, The Lessons of Lewis and Clark, by Daniel B. Botkin. And he is a naturalist who is talking about the fact that, in his opinion, nature was never perfect, this mythical nature during the past, that it was always in a state of change, a state of flux. And he's following in the footsteps of Lewis and Clark and going down and describing the nature they saw and how it's changed and evolved, and how nature continues to change and evolve. And that man's passage is not necessarily the cause for all of the change. Third one I'd like to talk about is called The War Against the Wolf, written by Rick McIntyre, or rather he was the editor. And this is a history, rather than talking solely about the introduction of wolves into Yellowstone Park, this is a history of America's antipathy towards wolves, starting from colonial times in Massachusetts in 1630, when the first edicts went out about selling bounties for wolf pelts, and going up through 1994 and 95 about the introduction of wolves back into Yellowstone Park. It's talking about America's relationships with the wolf as an animal all the way for the past 300 years almost. The fourth one I'm talking about is called They Call Me Agnes. The narrative is about the life of Agnes Yellowtail Deernose, who is a Crow woman. And the author went into interviews with Agnes Dearnose and her family and friends, talking about the changes time has brought to the Crows, to their relationship with their traditional tribal beliefs and juxtaposed against modern civilization, how they change, how they adapt, and interestingly enough, a lot about the world of the Crow women for the past many years. I also like to talk about some of the newer fiction, and I'll start off also something with a little local flavor, is by Rick Bass, who has written a lot of nonfiction, most recently The 9 Mile Wolves, talking about Montana and the wolves. He does live in Montana, but this is fiction. These are a collection of short stories talking about his friends, his neighbors, real people who are interesting in an unusual little way. We've got a number of new mysteries in. This particular one is by Bill Pronzini, his popular Nameless Detective. This is called Hard Case, and in this one the detective is asked by a young lady to search out her birth parents. She's an adopted child, and finding out that these birth parents may not be anybody she really wants to meet. Next one is by David Hagberg. It's called High Flight, and it's somewhat in the vein of the Clive Cussler or Tom Clancy type novels, high adventure. This one is based on the premise of real similar, possibly even to Michael Crichton's Rising Sun, in that it's dealing with industrial warfare rather than with the military tensions between countries. This one starts when planes start mysteriously falling out of the air, and it's going to destroy the industry of the United States. This is a new one by Richard Francis. It's called Taking Apart the Poco Poco. And the Poco Poco is a dance club where the couple in this novel first met. And as this is coming down, they're starting to re-examine their marriage, their lives, if it's falling apart just like the building where they first met. And finally, we've got one that's called Walking West by Noelle Sickles. And this is a Western told from a woman's point of view. And her main character is migrating with the wagon trains across the West and finding out that she has to change from being a dependent person to being someone who is very strong and very capable of making a home for herself in this wilderness. And these are just a sample of some of the new books that are here and available in the library. And we'll hope you'll stay with us and meet our guests coming up next on the Library Show.
Welcome back once again to the third segment of our program. As I said earlier, our guest this evening is Fred Longen, who owns Broken Diamond Books in town. Fred's with us this week, and next week, Barbara Schenkel, who owns one of the other used and rare book dealers, bookstores in town. Barbara owns Bar John's Books, just a block away from Fred's store. Barbara will be with us next week, but Fred is with us tonight to talk a little bit about a program that we're going to be putting on September 28th called What Makes a Book Valuable. This is going to be a program where Fred and Barb are going to talk about old books and how you assess the value of a book and whether or not that book that you've got sitting up in your attic that your grandmother gave you years and years ago may really be worth something or may not be worth much of anything. Thanks for joining us tonight, Fred. Let's talk a little bit about your background. How'd you get started in the book business, particularly the rare book business?
It was a long route. My passions in life, really, I guess, are language and art. And I've always been a voracious reader and have always been interested in art. As a young man, I started buying art, and I bought in an area that I was fascinated with, and no one else seemed to be fascinated with. But I didn't care. I felt I knew what I was interested in, and bought. At one point in the 1970s, those things became exorbitantly expensive. Some other people decided that they were interested and they had more money than I did.
Okay.
So I, at that time, began to buy photographs.
Okay.
And I bought them because I was a photographer myself and interested in photography. And I also picked up those books that were related to photography that I thought were important. I soon had more photographs than I wanted, and began to sell some.
Okay.
And then people came and looked at my library and said, "Oh, I see you have a first edition of Edward Weston's day books.
Uh-huh.
How about selling me those?"
Okay.
And that was the spark.
Okay.
I began to think about books. Barbara at Bar-John's, in fact, was important to me in getting into the book business because I had known her for years, and she had changed her store over a period of time, and I thought that there was a niche that wasn't being filled in Billings and that possibly I could fill. So we had lunch together. She was very encouraging and full of ignorance and blindly happy to go on. I opened up a bookstore.
Yeah.
With the point that I had was, or the thing that was important to me was, I felt that there were lots of books that were out of print that were reasonable and just weren't available easily in Billings, and so that was where I started.
You've got a couple places. You've got the one downtown. You've got one out on Grand too, don't you?
Yeah, the one on Grand is my studio. Is no
your
longer
studio.
a bookstore.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
at 2710 2nd Avenue North,
Yeah.
and that's the store. Running
Okay.
two stores
Okay.
was more work than
Okay.
I wanted to do.
Let's talk a little bit about the program, a little bit about books. And the program we're calling "What Makes a Book Valuable," and that's, I guess, the question that we might start. We hear, and I'm sure you've encountered lots of times, people who come in with a book that maybe is 50 to 100 years old, and they think it's worth a fortune. Is it worth a fortune, and how do you tell that, and what is it that makes a book valuable? What gives a book value, do you think?
You mentioned
monetary value as opposed to...
Yeah, monetary value is very interesting, and that whole question of value is a very interesting question. You mentioned people having books in their attic. One of the all-time best sellers in the book business was a book published probably 50 years ago now called The Gold in Your Attic. And the chances of finding gold in your attic are approximately equal to the chances of finding real gold in your attic. You're probably better off in the Beartooth. But they are there. And in fact, they can, people do walk into my store with amazingly good books. I get calls, 30 a week, saying I have an old book, and as for openers, that's bad openers. People seem to, those people who call me seem to identify age and rarity as those things which make a book valuable.
And it doesn't necessarily make a book valuable.
Age and rarity both are important, but there are a lot of things that come first.
Okay. You've brought a few things with you. Would some of these fall into the category you think of valuable books?
Yeah, some of them do. The thing, just to go back to value first, what makes a book monetarily valuable is, first of all, somebody's got to want it. If nobody wants it, doesn't matter how rare it is, still nobody wants it.
It's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for.
And then probably the next most important criterion is the condition that the book is in. If a book is in poor condition, and I have a couple, this one, Boy Scout books are always popular as collectible items. This one's about shot. I just picked it up this morning. Even though it's a collectible book, I've got $6 on it. It's in fine condition. It would be worth considerably more. This book, which I have in a little plastic bag, History of New York, by Knickerbocker, also known as Washington Irving. He was an important author. This is not a first edition, but it's a beautiful little book from 1839. It's also illustrated by Cruikshank. And that's another thing that makes a book valuable if it appeals to a wider audience audience that goes in both directions. Not
Cruikshank's.
only Washington Irving collectors, but Cruikshank
He's the
collectors.
British photographer. He did he's the
Artist.
British artist.
Mhm.
He did a couple of very early Dickens novels.
Mm-hmm.
too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and this is 1839.
Cruikshank, yeah.
Those people who say it's in good condition
Mhm.
for an old book,
Mhm.
this is, if you can see, what an old book can look like from
Okay.
1839.
Okay.
Another thing that makes a book valuable, and here are two examples,
Mhm.
are they're in areas of people's specialization.
Okay.
Those people who are the best collectors are those people who collect
Mhm.
from within themselves.
Mhm.
They have a passion for Fords,
Mhm.
maybe, Model T Fords. And they are buying everything on Model Ts.
Okay.
And they will buy, not necessarily expensive. Book collecting is relatively inexpensive.
All right.
But they will buy and put together a fantastic collection because they have a passion for it.
Okay. Okay.
I have a doctor in town who is a collector of old home remedy magazines from the not magazines, books from the 1930s.
So the value of a book is pretty personal too, in some ways.
Very
What
personal,
might
and
be,
it's very important.
What might be valuable to you isn't going to mean anything to me because it might not be a subject that I'm going to be
Exactly.
interested in. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And there are people who create value.
Okay.
This
Okay.
collector of home remedy books, which he can get from $6 to $30,
Okay.
may put together a wonderful collection.
Okay. Now the program that you and Barbara are going to be doing on the 28th, let's talk a minute or so about some of the things that you're going to be covering
Mhm.
in that program. What types of things are going to be covered in that program? I know one of the things that I think you two are asking people to do is anybody who wants to come to the program, if they want to bring a book along that they think might be valuable, and you'll take a look at it and kind of give them tips on whether or not it might be valuable.
Yeah, please do. I think
Okay.
that what we're talking about now is what I expect that Barbara and I will be talking about to the
Okay.
people who come.
Okay.
What makes a book interesting, what makes it valuable, and also we can perhaps give you some ideas,
Okay.
some ideas about if they like to go to garage sales
Mhm.
or if they have some books in their attic,
Mhm.
where to look for help.
Okay.
This little item here, for instance, we sell. It's called Identification of First Editions,
Uh-huh.
and it's much more useful than and cheaper than
Okay.
30 price guides.
Sure. All right. All right. One of the questions that I was going to ask you that is of interest to me, I guess, since I'm a book lover, you're obviously a book lover. You hear in this age of the computer and the internet and whatnot, we hear a lot of information about books going on computers, and sometime there's going to be a paperless society, and we're going to be reading books on a computer screen. You think that's going to happen, or what kind of reaction do you have to that? Have you thought about that much at all? Or?
Well, I have given it some thought, and my reaction is good. I don't think it matters.
Okay.
Books have existed for a long time. Printing has not existed for an awfully long time. Printing has existed for about 600 years, printing in the West. And books became cheap. When books came along, which were the technological advance of the day,
Sure.
we lost something.
Mm-hmm.
We lost, those cultures lost an ability to convey and hold on to their histories and their stories in an oral manner. And we've lost that. We don't have it.
No, we don't.
And I think that what we see new coming out of the electronic age, I don't know where it's going to go, but sure, we'll see books. I'm sure there's already magazines.
Yeah, and there are already some books on computer screen too, and whatnot. So.
So sure we will. And I
Okay.
think, if anything, we'll gain from it. And maybe begin to be more careful about our language, because a lot more people are using language publicly
Okay.
over the computer.
Okay. A couple of things, just I guess, about the book business and the type of business you're in. If someone comes to you, someone's looking for an out-of-print book or something, and they come to you, what kind of procedure, what do they need to know about the book if they want you to help them find the book? Do you trace books for people? Do you have like a book finding service for people? Do you
We do.
help them with that kind of thing? What kind of information
We
they
do,
need to
and
know?
it's one of the things that I really feel like we have as a service. And up until a couple of years ago, it took, and it can still take months.
Okay.
But we're using computers, and we're now online to an inventory of about 1 million books.
Oh, okay.
And so we find them. It sure helps if you got the author.
Sure.
But whatever you have,
Okay.
bring it to us. If you've got author and title, great. If
Okay.
you got just an idea,
Okay. So this
often we
is
can find them.
It's like a centralized database that ties you into
It is,
other
it is.
dealers and distributors throughout
In the
country.
U.S. and Canada and Mexico.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Good. What is there a fairly big market in Billings for rare books, for used books, compared to, say, other cities this size? Are you familiar with other cities' markets? Is it fairly big in Billings?
It varies all over the place. In Billings, I don't know how to say whether it's fairly big.
Mhm.
The market in Billings is probably bigger than all of the state of Wyoming.
Mhm.
I don't know what's down there, but
Okay.
if there are collectors, they're not buying their books in Wyoming. I have in Billings,
Mhm.
the serious, passionate collectors
Mhm.
are still primarily Western history, Montana,
Right.
Charles Russell. We have at the store Charles Russell's first book,
Oh.
which is extremely valuable, very rare. Rare. Now I've used the word.
Okay.
And there are a lot of those, yes,
Okay.
in Billings and the environs. But I don't. I can go to New York or San Francisco and buy a book, come back here, and call a customer in New York and San
Okay.
Francisco and sell the book back to the same city I bought it in.
Okay.
And a large part of the dollar volume of my business is that.
Okay.
I have customers for Vardis Fisher, who's a Western writer
Mhm.
in Billings.
Mhm.
I don't know, there aren't very many collectors of first editions of The House at Pooh Corner, although there are more and more people who are
Okay.
getting interested.
Okay.
And even fewer collectors of Joyce Carey's
Joyce
great
Carey.
novel, and this is also a first edition in Dust Jacket, The African Witch.
Heard of
but
The
they're-
Horse's Mouth. I haven't heard of that one. By Joyce Carey.
They're here. I have Teddy Roosevelt collectors, Isaac Dennison collectors,
Okay.
and people who buy mechanics manuals.
Okay.
And those are
Good.
collectors.
Okay. Our time's running out. Thanks for joining us, Fred. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. We'll be continuing this discussion in a way on the next program with Barbara Schenkel, who will be our guest. And Barbara owns Bar John's Books in town. And Barbara will be with Fred on the evening of September 28th at the program that we're having called What Makes a Book Valuable. So join us next week at this time for another segment of the Library Show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jim.